Well, hello everyone. Dan Hurd, Dan Hurd Prospecting here. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, welcome. I hope to earn your subscription today. There is millions, and I'm not exaggerating, millions of dollars worth of gemstones sitting right there. This is part 2 of our series on opening a British Columbia, Canada gem mine for Peridot gemstones. Today, I'm going to show you a bit around the mine site. We're going to collect some stones and we're going to test out that jig and see if it will recover beautiful British Columbia Peridot. Wish me luck, and I hope you enjoy. Now, hopefully you got to see my first video on opening up this this gem mine, where I was just checking out a jig to see how well it separates, well, in that case, it was garnet from host material. Did a whole big test. I said I had to test with the Peridot. Now, the Peridot is over there. That outcrop is the Peridot outcrop. Today, I'm here to collect a bunch of the Peridot rocks. Things like, and just here over in the clearing, you can see beautiful Peridot crystal right there. That's, you know, like a $50 crystal right in that pocket. I'm going to collect a bunch of these rocks here, break them down, find pockets that have big Peridot crystals, and we're going to go back and we're going to do exactly what I did the first time with the jig, except this time using crushed basalt that has released the Peridot crystals, and see if the jig can separate the difference between the basalt and the Peridot and separate the crystals for us. That's the idea. First off, I'm gonna see if I can find some of those rocks with some really nice big crystal pockets in it. Yep, that's a good stone. That's like a 1 carat stone in the middle of that pocket there. We sell these things faceted as gemstones for between $50 and $75 per carat, depending on the look of the stone. Actually, first off, let's give you a bit of a tour of this mine site. Let's throw up the drone and show you what we're going to be doing here. You can see the truck here. That's the last place there's actually a road that we can drive into. But you can also see this old skidder trail or old road that's been reclaimed. It will take nothing to open up this road to drive a vehicle down. It will like an hour with a machine, if that, to open this up. And we can drive all the way up here to the upper landing. Now, this upper landing is the last place that we'll be able to, you know, create a big flat opening and create our mine site right here. This is where we'll have the crusher, the jig, all the processing equipment. Everything is going to happen right here on this landing. Now, if you can see off in the distance just a little bit, right up there, that's the outcrop. That's the outcrop itself, and that's where we'll be getting material from. Now, we'll have to create a road into that, or a trail for the machinery to get up there to actually pull our material down, dig and pull our material down from that outcrop. But that is loaded in Peridot. Every rock there has gem quality Peridot in it. Now, here's the landing here where the mine site will be. If you look up from that, you'll see off in the distance, there's the truck, there's a lake over there. There's actually a creek that runs just down in there. So there's lots of water around if we need to bring any water in for running the jig or the processing or keeping dust down or anything like that. There's lots of water around, whether we truck it in or pipe it in or pump it in, whatever. I'm not sure yet, but lots of water around. Let's head back to the truck. Not even over on the teleslope yet, we're finding great crystals in a lot of these rocks. Like, I'm just sitting right in front of the truck right now. They're all over the place. Nice. Hey, I should give a shout out right now to Chris Roback. He's actually my partner in this whole mine endeavor here. He's the one that's kind of doing it all. I'm just here for the fun, just here for, you know, comic relief. I'm not sure. I'm doing some testing for him, but really Chris is who is running this operation. He's got the paperwork in to get it as a registered, proper, permitted mine, all that kind of stuff. He's funding it all. He's doing everything. I just provide the land and a little bit of help along the way. Another nice crystal in that pocket. That's another $40 crystal. Maybe not quite. Will I pop it out? Let's see if I can pop that one out. Okay, that crystal wasn't quite as big as I thought it was. Still a $10 gemstone there. Here's the landing. big pile of wood to burn. Nice and big area. We'd probably push all the way over there so that we're directly below. See the rocks up in the trees right there? Those are all peridot rocks. The outcrop I was talking about earlier is right there, but basically anything along that ridge, even right there, all the way over. So if we build our mine right here, gravity will help bring everything down to us. Well, this video is supposed to be more about separating the peridot from the basalt than it is about showing you the mine site. So I think I'm going to just head over there and start collecting up some basalt rocks that show big or lots of peridot crystals in the basalt rocks. The plan is to take those rocks down to Mount Baker Mining and Metals, to his jaw crusher, crush them down to a certain size that should liberate all the crystals while still not crushing too many of the crystals. Yes, we will crush some crystals. There will be losses. Absolutely. But hopefully the idea is that enough of the good crystals are liberated in the crushing process that we are still profitable. Anyhow, after we crush the rock, I'll take it back to my shop at home where we're going to run it through the River Dance gold mining jig. It's just a little test jig. All I'm doing is testing the concept, whether or not a mineral jig has enough differentiation that it can separate out the peridot crystals, which are very slightly heavier than the basalt itself. So there is a bit of a difference there. If the jig can separate them by specific gravity and actually bring the crystals to the bottom and float off the basalt, then we have a great way, once we've excavated here and crushed, to recover the crystals. It's all a bit of a test right now. I don't know if it can do it, but that's what we're doing, an experiment today. So let's go grab some rocks and bring them down to Jason. Now the plan will be to use the hammer drill, some feather and wedges, and a hammer, and break open enough rocks that we're going to find enough bigger pockets that make this test worthwhile. Nope, nothing good in that one. Now that's a pocket. Let's see if we can break that one out. Throw it through the crusher, free up those stones. There's a bunch of big stones in it. We'll try to crack it so it goes through it. Maybe it'll free up a few, and then any it doesn't free up, we'll just free up with the crusher. It's hard not just to go after the crystals themselves, but I have to do this test. There's a nice free crystal I just freed up. It'll go into a bag separate. And then there's that guy. Nice. Okay, I've got to stop getting these perfect stones. I got to start just getting nests that I can crush. Too many perfect stones. Such a hard life. Okay, stop that, Dan. Stop finding crystals. I got a job to do here. The forbidden Jolly Rancher. Now there's a good rock to throw through the crusher. Big crystals in that pocket, medium, small ones in the other pockets. That'll be a good test. And sometimes you find weathered out stones just sitting in the dirt. And another. I may have to dig some dirt from here. There's another rock with nice big crystals in a pocket and other pockets on it. That'll be another nice one to crush up. Even some little ones like this that have big crystals will be perfect to throw through the crusher. Crusher will liberate those crystals, no problem. Okay, that's 2 buckets full. Let's take those down to Jason and crush them. Well, I brought a couple of the buckets of the basalt and peridot down here to Mount Baker Mining and Metals. Amazing equipment, and we're gonna run it through the jaw crusher. He's just run inside right now to grab some tools because we have to set the jaws to be just the right size to hopefully liberate the crystals without breaking too many of the crystals. And I tried to grab a really good cross section of just the standard small bombs. I have a bunch here with big crystals in it to test out whether or not these crystals can make it through still nice and big, or if enough of them can make it through. And then I also grabbed a couple of the just full-on olivine bombs. Sometimes there are bigger crystals in the center of these, and this will also give me just a lot of the material to test on the jig. I'm hoping to get out of these 2 sort of part full buckets 1 complete full bucket of crush. What you got in there?
Bags of ore.
There's gold in them there bags. So Jason adjusted the jaws to be about 3/4 of an inch, I think. And I think that's gonna give us a good test for the crush.
Let's try it out.
I think we can just run it all through. Maybe we'll run one like good rock through just to make sure we've got the right size.
Yeah, okay.
And then, yeah, I think we just dump the buckets through. That's just 1 solid bomb of peridot, yeah.
Wow, that's
an olivine bomb or nest.
That's cool.
A xenolith.
A xenolith.
A xenolith.
Yeah, very cool.
And those are some big crystals in that one.
So these are worth some money, you're
yeah, absolutely. There's probably $300 or $400 worth of crystals in that pocket right now.
Really?
But I could pop each one out, send them off to get faceted. But what I really want to find out is if we can do this mechanized. Like if we can get a machine to break these out. Even if half the crystals get crushed, the fact that we can go through so much more volume rather than doing it by hand, in the end we end up with way more crystals.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so you want to run that one?
Yeah, we'll run this one through. There's a lot of green crystals in here. Now it's just a case of running through the mineral jig to see if they've liberated full big crystals.
So you're trying to get stuff like this?
Yes, 100 times that size.
Okay.
Hopefully. Hopefully, yes.
Fair enough.
Chris plans to use a cone crusher to do this, not a jaw crusher.
Oh, yeah?
I don't really know the difference. He seems to have a reason why.
Ooh.
But this will give us a good test to see if the mineral jig will actually work for what we want.
Yeah. It's that balance between too fine or not fine enough, isn't it?
My worry is that the specific gravity between basalt and peridot isn't going to be enough to separate them. Yeah, that's my worry, because they are fairly close. They are different, but they are fairly close.
Oh, here's another big one.
Nice. There's some big ones in here. This is gonna work.
Oh, look at this one. I don't know if that one. They're everywhere with stuff.
This is gonna work nice for crushing. Let's hope we can separate. Basalt is hard.
It's hard, yeah.
That was way louder than I was expecting. I didn't put my earmuffs on or anything like that, and that was way louder than I was expecting for what looked to be a soft rock, but no, that was hard.
The basalt's super hard. I'm fascinated by your gems here, Dan. This is pretty cool. They're popping out kind of like you want them, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They're beautiful.
That is great. We're sending those away to get faceted into gemstones, and yeah. We've been told by the cutters in Jaipur that BC Peridot is some of the nicest on the market right now.
Really? Very cool.
Yeah. Look at all that. It's all green.
Wow.
I haven't seen any big crystals, but there's a lot of small ones in this load. Looks like we had all the big ones in the first load.
Yeah. There's a lot of them in this one, though.
Yeah. I'm sure your guys in the shop there just loved all that dust we were sending in for them.
And the noise. They're used to the noise, I bet.
Well, there we go. That'll be enough for a good test. So Jason, again, thank you so much for letting me abuse your equipment.
Of course, yeah, it's always fun to have you down, Dan. Thanks for coming, and I'm glad it worked out well with your rocks.
Awesome. And of course, if you need yourself some mining equipment, check out Mount Baker Mining and Metals. Well, I'm back home with the crushed basalt. The first job for me to do is to just sift out the oversized stuff. Now, we crushed it down to, I'm guessing, about 3/4 minus. I'm going to start with a 1/2-inch sieve. This will just take out all the bigger rocks. I'll look through those bigger rocks and see if there's any good specimens in them. And what I mean by specimens, you know, the little chunks of basalt, or of peridot, those are kind of neat. But if I find any basalt that still has nice crystals of peridot on the basalt, those could make little perky box display pieces. Really nice. Yeah, that would be a beautiful little display in a perky box. Now, the whole idea here is that that would be the landscape rock, and that would get processed for gemstones. When I'm dumping out the buckets into the classifier, I am seeing lots of facettable crystals in the undersized material that's going through the sieve. So there is lots there, for sure. Kind of hard to see because it's so dusty dumping out like this, but once I get the water on this, those will just become crystal clear. Yes, pun intended. Now, as I sift through here, I'm going through very carefully, pulling out anything that could be a perky box specimen. If you don't know what a perky box is, it's a little plastic box with sort of a clear dome on top that you can put small mineral specimens in. And collectors, you know, collect perky boxes full of all sorts of different mineral specimens. I'll leave a picture here somewhere. I plan to make a few flats of perky box specimens like this. For selling at my own shows and maybe even for Chris to sell it at his stores. But really what I'm going through here is, yes, I'm separating out the perky box specimens, but I'm looking for any large crystals that may not have been liberated through the crushing process. That's not facettable, because I want to evaluate how well crushing liberates the stones. I did find one. I'll get you a close-up of this in a second. But there is a piece here that has a crystal big enough to facet, and that was in the oversized stuff. So I'll get you a good shot of that, but I'm going through and pulling out any of these because I want to see how many we would lose if we did a 3/4 inch crush of the facettable stones. So here we are. There's one facettable stone on top there, and I believe I see one underneath in behind here. So in that process, those did not get liberated. Now that's only one, and I have seen dozens, if not hundreds, of freed up stones go through the sieve. So if that's my losses, not too bad. But I still have 2 buckets to go through. That one's almost facettable. Not quite. The fastener could make a gem out of that. It would just be a very, very small one. Okay, a very full bucket of 1/2 plus, a half bucket of 1/2 minus, and maybe 3 dozen perky box specimens. Now to run that through the jig, I actually don't want 1/2 inch minus, I want 1/4 minus. So moving it over to the Arbor Fabricating classifier and take it down to 1/4 minus. Though any crystals that end up in this classifier are, you know, the best crystals because they would be between 1/4 and 1/2, and those would make gemstones for sure. And when we take this up to a commercial scale, we would have a jig that could take all of the 1/2 inch material straight through it. So that we would capture things like that. Yikes. I don't know if I should put that back in there. I don't know what to do with that. Put that over here for now. Now, this isn't a single crystal. It's actually about 3 of them all together, but there is one in there that could make a 1/2 carat stone. That one on top could probably make a 1/4 carat stone. Yeah, the fastener would just have to break that apart into 3 pieces and then use the facet the usable portions of them. And there's 2 more that did not make it through the 1/4 inch classifier. Again, they're fractured, but there's portions of those crystals that could still be made into gemstones. And another one. Now there are a lot of crystals not making it to the 1/4 inch one here, but this is an interesting one. Still has some basalt attached to it. Has a couple of small facettable ones on there, but because of not being crushed out completely, it's not going through the 1/4 inch, even though those would be sub-1/4 crystals. Okay, bucket of 1/2 plus, a bucket of 1/4 to 1/2, and then a bucket of 1/4 minus. Look at that crystal. And that there is what I'm going to put through the jig today. And for trying to separate the peridot from the basalt today, I will be using the Riverdance Gold Mining miniature little mineral jig. Now I need to contact the people from Riverdance Gold Mining here and find out if this sound is normal. Or if I've missed greasing something somewhere, because that sounds terrible. But it just could be a feature of the gearbox they have in here. Anyhow, let's get some water going. I'm a little bit worried about my water supply today. It is late summer, and my water system here is just down to a trickle up in the hills. I could run out of water today. Oh, there we go. I am catching all the tailings in case this doesn't work. Or even if I just want to evaluate how well it worked, I can go through the tailings to see how many crystals came out. Put the material at the very back, and it pulses it forward, hopefully settling the heavy stuff to the bottom and pushing the lighter basalt off the top. That being said, I see lots of crystals going over right now, over the first one. Let's hope. I may also have to classify tighter than this to make this work. So far, this is not looking good. I'm seeing lots of peridot crystals going over with the basalt. I've turned down the water flow some. I do have a water problem. I hear air bubbles coming through my water system right now. Oh, I'm worried. This was gonna be my way of doing this. But watching right here, I'm seeing crystal after crystal after crystal flow over and not sink down. It's loose, it's sinking nicely. I have no problem with the working of the jig right now. I'm just thinking the difference between basalt and olivine crystals might not be enough. We'll see. It doesn't look bad. It's mostly basalt going over. Oh no, I'm losing water. There's big air bubbles. I can hear it coming down the system. Big air bubbles coming through now. That's not good. I got through about half of my material. At least that will give me a proof of concept. I would have liked to have gone deeper here on this, but oh well, I have to work with what I've got here. I did bring a water pump if I need to pump from the creek. I'll go until I actually run out of water. I hear lots of air coming through. Something else I should mention that makes this jig separate the basalt from the peridot a bit easier. The basalt comes out in flakes. The way it crushes down into typical flakes. Big, flat, lots of surface area for the pulsing water to push up. The peridot tends to come out in grains, round or square, but kind of as thick as they are wide, so it falls through the pulsing water easier. So the specific gravity does part of the work, but kind of the hydro equivalence, I think that's actually a term, of the big flat flakes versus the small round grains also does some of the work. I'm definitely seeing basalt floating to the top here. As I've really overloaded this, I see underneath it peridot coming over. But if I look at the front, I don't see any or very little falling over the front here. I think it's doing what it's supposed to. I actually really like the look of what I'm seeing right now. This might do it. I was a little worried to start with, but I think it might be doing it. Now, one thing I do find interesting is the sub 20 mesh that comes out the bottom is almost pure peridot, pure olivine, I should say. So the jig is definitely only taking the olivine crystals and dropping it down to the bottom of the jig. That's good to know. I'm actually really liking the look of what I'm seeing so far. This might do it. I won't know until I empty it out though. Well, that might be it for water. A really big bubble just came through. I got through about 2/3 of the crush. That will be enough of a test. I'm just gonna let it process for a little bit here, and then I think we'll shut her down and see what's in there. I think I'm seeing that the big bubbles of air coming through are actually disrupting the action here. When I see a big bubble come up, it pulls a whole bunch of olivine with it, puts it on the surface. When I see them come up right here, like that one, a whole bunch of olivine is right near where it goes over the edge. So this bad water I have right now might be causing me issues. Straight up olivine, right below the surface. That's nice. Let's conserve a bit of water. Oh, I really hope this worked. This would be nice. Looks right on the surface. We got basalt right on top. But if you dig down into it at all, it just goes to almost pure olivine. And for all my wing nut lovers out there, 4 wing nuts take off the top, the trays. 4 wing nuts are off. Tray lifts out. Machine looks nice and clean inside. Now to flip this over and hope we see crystals on the bottom. Big ones. It looks like I'm getting better shots of this stuff in the shade versus full sun. So I just brought over the front door, the porch, and found an old section of sluice box that I can flip it into. Let's see how this goes. That's a bit tight for this. That worked. Come on, crystal. Oh my goodness. There's big crystals everywhere. Oh, that worked so well. Look at all the big crystals. Now the screen on the bottom here is 20 mesh. To do this for production's sake, we probably want I'm guessing 10 mesh. Yeah, 10 mesh would probably leave us just the crystals we want to facet. Right now, we've got a whole lot of bigger crystal or smaller crystals in there with the big ones. Nice. Now there's still a ton of experimentation to do here. I want to run my tailings. I want to run with more water, less water, more pulses, less pulses, everything I can do on a jig scale to see what the best separation was. This first test was just a proof of concept. Can a mineral jig separate out basalt from peridot, peridot from basalt? And this is a absolute yes, it can. Now looking at this, you may be saying, oh, there's some lines of basalt. There's some spots of basalt on this. Why is there basalt down at the bottom? Well, that was the divider right there. There's a divider in here. The divider was right there, and it looked like a bunch of basalt had pushed up against the edge of the divider. And then when I lifted it off, it just pushed that basalt over here. That's a very small bit of basalt that was just trapped in there. Over here, it looks like down along the edge of the jig box, some basalt got caught, and then it pulled over when I lifted it off. But really, this looks like it is basically basalt all the way to the, peridot all the way to the top. It would not take much right now to run this through a 1/8 inch screen, and then I could pull out anything that's bigger than 1/8 real easy. There are some nice gemstones in here. These are easily faceted into a 1/4 carat stone. Maybe even a 1/3. Oop, there's gone. May have been able to get a 1/2 out of that. Oh no, I think it fell through the crack. It's missing. How sad. It's funny how every single one of my cameras reacts differently to this stuff and this amount of light. A full-size mineral jig running at the end of the crusher is going to do wonders with this stuff. We're going to get buckets and buckets of facetable gems out of this. This is crazy. Chris is even talking about hiring a whole floor at the gem cutters building to do just peridot if this mine works as well as we think it's going to. That's a nice crystal. That's a hairy knee. Ugh, yuck. So I love the fact that all of the full, complete, clean, clear crystals are all sitting right on the bottom. Basalt up higher means there's still lots of room for the big, clean, perfect crystals to fall down into the bottom there. If we get a finer screen and a full-size jig, not a finer screen, a coarser screen, and a full-size jig, I think we could have the perfect separation of the crystals we need for faceting. And I will be checking all those tailings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take those tailings and run them through the jig one more time, but I have to wait for the water system to recharge itself. I'm getting like, maybe a gallon an hour out of the ground right now. And yes, I've got a big tank up there, but it's going to take a long time to fill it. Okay, let's have a look when I dig through this. Oh yeah, Peridot all the way down, and like great crystals, great crystals. It gets darker and darker as it gets near the bottom, which was the top, because you get more and more basalt in it. So the good crystals were sitting on the bottom for sure, and up near the top was more basalt. I got so many more tests to do now. I am so excited this worked. Well, I just came down to sit down by the creek here for a little bit, and gives me an opportunity to give today's geology lesson of the day: density. Why can we separate peridot from basalt? Well, it's all to do with a slight difference in density. Yes, peridot is slightly heavier than basalt for the same size rock. Yes, often in my videos I use the word heavy incorrectly when I'm talking about density or specific gravity. When I pan out a gold pan, I say there's heavies in the bottom. That term heavies actually means denser materials are left in the bottom. When I say that gold is heavier than magnetite, I'm actually saying gold is denser than magnetite, or heavier for the same size rock. Yes, I do get a bit lazy in my terminology and I just say they're heavier, but when I'm saying heavier on my videos, I'm typically saying heavier for the same size rock. Unless I'm moving a great big boulder and I say that it's too heavy for me to move, and then I'm talking about general weight. But typically, gold panners talk about heavies, they're talking about dense materials. Why can we separate peridot from basalt? Because peridot is denser than basalt. There's a couple different reasons which make a mineral heavier or denser than another. One is the elemental makeup of the molecule that makes up that mineral. If it is using heavy elements, making heavy molecules, then yes, it's going to be a dense material. If it's using lighter molecules, things that are higher up on the periodic table, elements making up those molecules higher up on the periodic table, yes, it can be a lighter mineral or a less dense mineral. But there's another factor that determines density, and that is how tightly packed those molecules actually are. In something like crystals, often those molecules are in a lattice work that is very densely packed, making them a very heavy, for its size, mineral, very dense mineral. But something like granite or basalt, which is just a mash up of the molecules kind of pushed loosely together, those can create a less dense packing of the molecules, resulting in a less dense mineral. Some things like basalt can even have holes in there, bubbles, which make it a really, really undense or light mineral. In fact, one type of volcanic has so many bubbles in it that it is light enough it can float on water. It's called pumice. But anyways, why can we separate one mineral from another in something like a mineral jig? It's because the density, not really the heaviness. There you go. There's today's geology lesson of the day. Now, Chris has a faceter lined up in Jaipur who runs a whole factory on faceting. And his building has like multiple floors of faceters cutting stones. My hope is that we can send him everything over 1/8 of an inch. Then he can have his guys grade everything. Anything that's got fractures in it, actually go and break them on their fractures to see if the resulting 2 stones are still worth using or if it's just not worth it anymore. And do all of the tedious work there with the people who know what can and can't be faceted and what's worth it. So hopefully we'll be able to just run the jig, get en masse all this 1/8 inch plus stuff and just ship it over there en masse, and then let them do all of the tedious work there and just ship back to us the faceted stones. And at this point, that's where someone's gonna comment, why don't you have a North American faceter do the work for you? Well, when you're talking about thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of gems being cut, we just don't have the capacity here. There's no one here doing gem faceting in that kind of scale. Over in Jaipur, they have whole buildings, whole neighborhoods, whole regions dedicated to cutting gemstones. That's what they do. That's where all of the experts are over there. So why don't we use a North American person to do our faceting? There isn't one. And that's just a factor of the industry. Yes, there are people in North America doing small scale faceting, doing one-ofs, doing the high-end stuff, maybe doing small lots, but there's no one that can even come close to what they can do in Jaipur for faceting. I really wish I had my 1/8 inch sieve here so I could sift these out right now. Bad planning. Oh look, I do have my 1/8 inch here. I was wondering where that thing went to. Haha! Let's sift this out and find out what we got. I had enough water to fill a pan so I can sift. I have to be careful how much water I use here. Up at the workshop, I can run it dry, but down here at the house, I can't run it dry because I need to keep enough to be able to flush the toilets. Really sucks not being able to flush the toilet. Since I have no water in the system, I've come down to the creek. And we're going to do some gem sieving of the tailings. Now these tailings are still loaded in peridot crystals. I'm just hoping that I don't find any big facetable ones when I do my flip. If you haven't seen me gem sieving before, I have many videos on my channel that explain exactly what I'm doing here and why it works. Yes, this too is all about specific gravity. Okay, here comes the flip. Green! A dot of green. Now, is there any big ones? If I see any big ones here, it means that once through the jig is not enough. I'd have to do multiple times through the jig. But I'm not seeing anything big. That's an awesome center. I'll take my time here. I'll poke around the edges. I'll poke around everywhere and see if there's anything big. A bigger one. It's not big. Probably doesn't even make the 1/8 of an inch. It's probably the biggest crystal I see there though. They could facet that, but that would be a really tiny gemstone. All pretty small stuff in the tailings. I think that's acceptable. Even around the edge, I don't see anything really that big. And these are typically the badly formed, like multiple crystals in one clump, that kind of stuff. Yeah, out near the edge here, it has to have some sort of reason why its density didn't bring it to the center. So usually fractured crystals or multiple crystals in one lump, reducing its density, something. Nothing big, nothing good, nothing usable out there. And in the center, they're beautiful crystals, but again, nothing facetable. And I don't know if there's a point of doing a flip with the stuff from the jig that went through the 1/8, because we know it's all great crystals. They're all between 20 mesh and 1/8, but none of them are really facetable. You don't want to try to facet anything smaller than 1/8 of an inch. The faceter, my faceter over in Jaipur said 1 millimeter is the smallest he'll try. And yes, these are bigger. 1/8 is bigger than 1 millimeter, but we don't need a whole bunch of tiny, tiny, tiny peridot gems. So that brings us to the big stuff. Let's put it in the sieve and see what happens. There's a lot, and I mean a lot, of basalt in that. So going through a gem sieve down the water didn't really work with this. There's just not enough material to have the lights float and the heavy sink and everything. So I'll flip it, but I think this might be a manual pick through. Oh my goodness, there is big gems all through that. Big facetable gems all through. These are 1/8 to 1/4 inch. So anything in here that's a clear, clean gem is facetable. Everything in my hand is facetable, and that was from less than 2 buckets of rock. And we plan to feed a cone crusher with an excavator which would be putting through that equivalent of rock about every 5 seconds. Isn't it crazy how the different cameras show the stone off so differently? These are just amazing color. That would make 2 gemstones. That there would be 1. That end would have to be taken off, but there's a great gem right in the middle. That one's solid. That's not a crack in the middle, that's just a ridge on the surface. I am so excited about this project. Now to send those off and get them faceted. Well, I'd call that a huge success. Crushing liberated 95% of the faceable stones. No, we don't know how many it destroyed in the crushing process, but of what we came out with at the end, 95% of them were liberated from the host rock. The jig did a great job of separating the clean crystals from all the garbage, and I know a little bit more. I know to use a 1/8 inch screen in the bottom of the jig. When we get an industrial jig, it needs a 1/8 inch screen. It doesn't take much to tune it to separate those stones. So, all in all, a huge success. Hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me that thumbs up. If I haven't earned your subscription yet, I hope I earned it today. And a big thanks to everyone for watching. Until the next one. Bye.